Hello, and welcome to the webinar today. My name is Ena Lucia Mariaca Pacheco, and today's webinar will include a presentation on my research on the needs and stories of male survivors of child sexual abuse and exploitation and human trafficking. So what inspired this research? After working in this field for many years, I have to admit I was very female focused. I worked with women and children, and I had no idea about the magnitude of male victims and what they suffered. And it was only when I read a report while working at Interpol that stated that boys, infants, and toddlers were at the greatest risk of severe online sexual abuse, and that really hit me. This report stated that boys were more likely to be subject to severe abuse, such as assault, bestiality, and torture, which were at the highest levels of the coping scale. And the coping scale is how law enforcement measures the intensity of abuse when it comes to images or videos when doing analysis. And this broke my heart. I thought to myself that if this is true, which it is, why isn't more being done? So this is why I went into research for male victims. It revealed a huge gap, not only in the academic literature, but within global and local projects, policy, news, media, and general awareness. This changed my life and direction, and I wanted to be a researcher that included everyone's story, no matter what their gender, ethnicity, religion, or social status. So this research looked into the negative and positive interactions survivors have over their journey of healing. So we can see here and compare the two sides. In the negative side, we see that disbelief is a very big factor that harms survivors. So many survivors, when disclosing their sexual exploitation, were met with skepticism and disbelief, and a lack of understanding of grooming tactics, and they were met with an overly gender bias, whereby the person disclosing to explicitly dismiss the existence of male victimhood and in some cases female culpability to the survivors, ultimately resulting in police, mental health professionals, and medical staff taking no action on their behalf. And on the positive side, we see survivors healing, feeling respected, feeling human again by being able to be listened to and believed for the very first time or even afterwards. So if we just read some of these quotes, we can see in law enforcement when the child or the man later on was supposed to tell their story to law enforcement. So he says, I wasn't equipped to retelling my story to too many different people. When I was telling my statement, my mind just wasn't okay. And at the end, they didn't even believe me. So this was a child being asked over and over again, tell us what happened, tell us what happened. And so it's a lot better to have just one or two where there's audio and visual recording so the child doesn't have to keep going through that very traumatic experience. And over on the positive side, the police officer listened to my story and she believed me. It was the first time someone believed me, and it gave me courage to finally report it. This quote comes from an adult survivor who eventually had the courage to tell the police of what was happening. And luckily, this police officer was trauma informed and trained to listen to trafficking survivors and actually took action on behalf and created a case. So when comparing the top answers by survivors and experts on what has been most detrimental, we see the top answers do not fully align. For experts, the top answered was being untrained. And for survivors, their top answers ascribe experiences of denial by the perpetrators, committing the crimes, unbelief, or having their pain minimized, feeling fear, disrespect, or being re-traumatized. Therefore, as much as experts want a solution of training first, we really need to remember that victims and survivors are people first, with very human needs, such as being listened to, feeling respected, regaining a sense of dignity, and core human rights need to be placed first before we can even address the problem. So as we can see here in the list, it is very different on each side. So this really showed the experts that were a part of this study that maybe their number one priority is wrong. And our focus is always, let's help the survivor. And we have to train more, we have to learn more, we have to do more. But in reality, we just really need to sit back and listen to start. So when thinking about reintegration after trauma, most victims remain stuck in a cycle as we see here. Occurrence, when the abuse is happening; silence, not discussing it; era of acting out, this can be drug abuse, alcoholism, failed relationships. And if there's no intervention at this point, the victim continues to stage 4, lifelong ramifications. And many men face consequences such as divorce, lack of contact with their children, alcoholism, drug addiction, depression, long-term health consequences, and even suicide. And if we can see in the United States, this is one of your biggest issues, is the suicide of men. So I really hope that we can go back and stop this era of silence. So in order to do this, the results of the study suggested that intervention in form of personal action is needed towards inquiry and support, and services are the foundation of healing. So in addition to establishing community as an essential in disrupting the cycle of silence and begin the social reintegration and inner healing, the findings demonstrate the importance of the survivor to break their silence and begin their healing process. And so we can see this process in these blue blocks. And on the next slide, we'll see what survivors had said that they did at each stage to help them move forward. To go forward into healing, the survivors need to first recognize that a traumatic experience has happened and not minimize their story to themselves or continue to suppress any emotion, thought, or memories of their exploitation or abuse. This is very hard. I'm not going to say that this is easy, but it is needed. And after they begin the process to understand more about what happened, they can start to make community with trusted peers that support them and eventually lead to mental and emotional support from trained professionals, and finally treat different aspects of their trauma, such as addiction, complex PTSD, eating disorders, alcoholism, etc. This healing can then allow for relationship building and seeking what brings them joy. So these last steps allow for survivors to live more in freedom and happiness and in their own truth. And so a few of these examples are shown here, but all of the examples are in the research paper, but as well in the handout that I've created for today's session. So here are some recommendations for frontline professionals. As a result of this research, survivors told us in this that they received significantly more effective help from service providers who use trauma-informed practices, and I highly recommend people getting training in this particular field. Service providers are in a better position to help survivors if they know beforehand how to recognize indicators and how to support victims of child sexual exploitation. This in particular is important for familial perpetrators or female perpetrators because the indicators might be presented even if a boy attends school, participates in extracurricular activities, or even goes home to his family every day. I recommend that survivors be provided with a choice in which gender of a trauma-informed professional that they disclose to and work with. And so this is especially important when they have reported being fearful of a man, especially if they had a very traumatic experience with male sexual violence in their past. This just allows for an easier disclosure where they can feel safe, and vice versa. If they want a man, that should be provided as well. I also recommend that frontline professionals educators and other service providers in regular contact with children receive trauma-informed training on detecting potential victims of child sexual exploitation, and these training activities must contain content that address familial perpetrators, male victims, and female perpetrators. And I also believe that training to raise awareness on gender bias can help. as the participants repeatedly told me that their claims were met with skepticism they when they told someone that they were victims, as well as female criminality. This kind of training may help professionals in contact with them to remain objective with their interactions and provide better support. So the research has brought together men of many different walks of life. For some, I was the very first person that they told, and for others, they were learning and healing. And finally, the thrivers who had their ups and downs, but have found joy, love, and happiness again. So here are some recommendations from all of them. Number one, they say, please review the What Has Been Most Helpful to Male Survivors journey document, because it can be a helpful guide in the healing journey. Again, this is in the handout. And number two, you do not have to be public about what happened, but finding a safe and trusted individual to share your story will help lift the burden that you've been carrying for all these years. You do not want to feel trapped in a jail cell within your own body. Just find 1-2 people that you trust, and that will really help your soul. And finally, if you have symptoms of abuse or exploitation, it is really important to address those. Don't minimize your story to yourself. Let yourself feel, let yourself heal. And this will be a journey, a long one, but there is healing and there is hope. Thank you for listening to that presentation. We are now about to begin a panel discussion with Dr. Glenn Miles and Jeffrey Tennant. Thank you. The journey of a male survivor of trauma is often complex and challenging, with many facing unique obstacles that can make recovery and healing difficult. One of the most significant challenges is the stigma and the societal expectations around masculinity, which can make it harder for male survivors to disclose their experiences and seek help. This can lead to feelings of isolation and shame, further complicating the healing process. However, there are many societal interactions and support systems that can aid male recovery and survivor recovery. It is important to explore and identify these in order to provide better support and resources for those that have experienced trauma.